Zostel is actually redefining, I think, we are redefining how people travel. So you don't search the destination, right? If you know where you are going, you might as well go to booking.com and search there. You come to Zostel to, look and see of unheard destinations around you. But, the core fundamental business just mints money. So I couldn't really extract any sort of cultural value from building Zostel. The business I had to do was sell beds.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Startup Opera podcast. I'm Roshan, and today we have a very special guest on the podcast. We have Dharamveer Singh Chouhan, who's the co-founder of Zostel. So, DV, thank you so much for making the time. Really appreciate it.
Zo Roshan, pleasure to be here.
Zo. I'm learning the vocabulary, and it's a pretty cool setup you have here. And we'll be shooting some footage of the Zo house as well. So DV has been kind enough to invite us to the Zo house. Thank you so much for that.
It's really a pleasure. We've built this studio and it's rarely used, so it's great to have creators like you. Right. Use the space, help us improve. That's always there.
Yeah. No, it's got a great vibe. Whatever little I've seen of it, I hope to explore more.
I want you to see a lot more. He's totally focused on work, guys. He just came right into the studio. He's yet to check out the all vibrations at Zo house.
Yeah. No, but actually that's a good place to start, right? Because this seems very different from, obviously it's very different from a normal hotel that one would get into.
True.
But it's also very different from other co-living places that I have seen, right? What is that secret sauce? What is it that makes Zostel so unique?
So I think this place is actually Zo house. So we have Zostels that are separate. The way I have evolved, myself as well as the business is, built an expertise looking at real estate like products. So we have Zostel, our backpacker hostels, the phenomenal love from the community, had played its own role in the larger cultural revolution in our country, I would say, over the last decade. It's been more than 10 years now. And, so as we wanted to grow the business, we have a Zo Plus, Zostel Plus, a resort kind of category that's, if you are somebody who's looking for, still social, but, you want to have jacuzzi as well in your private room, so we tried to break those notions. So we have those kind of properties. Then we built something that's a bit more B&B exclusive. It's called as Zostel Homes, Zo Homes, we partner with other people as well. And Zo house that we are staying over here right now, we are recording this. This is actually our newest edition. So this is a very bold move. So this is a lifestyle club. So you have to become a member. So this is a new age 21st century take at what should be a lifestyle club for, sovereign individuals, people who belong to the world, So this is one of our first properties. It has its own persona. It has its own Twitter. BLRXO, and talks, vibes, invites, hosts people. To even get an entry over here, you need to buy the membership or, you need to know somebody who's a member and a friend. So that's how it operates. And, God's grace, community's love has been pretty strong.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. And I'll show you around the place. It's unlike anything that anywhere exists in the world. So it's a new real estate product, very difficult to explain.
Right.
People largely tell others that you have to go and check out the place.
Yeah.
It's that kind of place.
Right. Seems like you have to experience it to understand it.
Absolutely.
Right. Who is this person that you're building all of these assets for? I mean, is it the same person with different needs, perhaps, or do you have different types of people that you're building for?
I think both of them. So obviously, our customer has evolved over time. If you're a young lad, that maybe you'll experience more of Zostel. But, if you're married, then there are different times. You might be traveling solo sometimes. Even after marriage and having a kid, I love traveling solo sometimes. Maybe for a week in a year. And so I might travel to Zostels or, even Zostel Plus, etc. So if I'm with my kid, I'll probably go to a Zostel home, and if you want to stay long term, I'll probably come to Zo house. So in that sense, it's, the individual might be different, but it's definitely a different need. We look at a different mindset for the customer at each of our product. He might have a different persona at different times, but we do treat them from our understanding.
Right. So let's take a step back and go back to 2012, 2013 with your first category of properties that you launched, which is Zostel, right? This whole backpacker culture in India around that time was absent,
Yeah,
right? It didn't exist,
not existent, absolutely.
right? And so Zostel perhaps has had a very significant experience, very significant contribution to creating this entire culture itself, right?
Absolutely.
Today, it's not uncommon for young people to sort of like travel
Totally common.
across
And
India.
it's so nice
as
to
well.
see, right?
Yeah,
Like
amazing.
when we were young and in college, people
Yeah.
would travel only to Goa.
Yeah.
Maximum, right?
Live in shacks.
And nowhere else young people could travel.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of audiences don't know right now, but there were literally
Yeah.
no destinations young people could travel and have fun or even think about having fun. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm very happy, very proud of the small role that I have played along with obviously the larger community. Really pulled it out of us. There was so much. There was a big risk that I took. While I pushed off Zostel. So I've got an opportunity to backpack across Europe in 2011. And I come from Rajasthan, so I'd seen a lot of budget hotels. I'd seen hospitality very closely. I hated the industry, and when I backpacked, and then I stayed at backpacker hostels. And then by that time, I was already in IIT. I, had seniors who were in IIM, etc. So, I knew, so I kind of had this, young, naive, vendetta, I would say, against it. They're so passionate people, but job just sucks the life out of young people. And why does everybody has to do a job? Why don't people go out and do things of their own? And especially these brilliant folks from IITs and IIMs. And while I was just backpacking, I met these folks, these Australian guys, and they had no clue what they wanted to do with their life. And it was refreshing, and I just felt that why we don't have backpacker hostels in India. By the time I had just shut down my gaming startup, I was about to close it out. And so, I just did a lot more research this time. So I was already heartbroken a bit that it's very difficult to do a startup. I'll possibly do a lot more research till I have more resources or co-founders or something like that. And so I was a student once again. It was very comfortable for me to be a student entrepreneur. So, so around 2 years of research, and then got lucky, won a poker tournament, put all of that money, built the first hostel in Jodhpur, and just told all my friends about what I'm doing. A lot of energy came in. My couple of my friends from IIT, they quit their jobs, they came straight off. I was still in first year at IIM, so I told them that I won't take a job. And then it spread out. A lot more friends from IIM who were interested in entrepreneurship, they joined in. And we added, whatever value we could in different sense. But two of our co-founders were on the ground, and a lot more early users were all largely outside Indians. They were foreigners who were coming to India. They understood the cultural concept of backpacker hostels. The way they searched was totally different, right? So the whole idea was that we were never on Make My Trip. You had to know, how to book a hostel, so that, that was that sort of an exclusivity that came with it. That obviously, today it's a large mass scale market, and we did want, if you look at my blogs, I did want, if somebody else can build 1,000 or unlock the destinations in India, I would happily do something else. That was our larger vision and idea. And I think today we play our role, and then obviously there are many other people who do. We obviously try to take the boundaries further, like what we are doing with Zo House, and taking a new take at clubs. Maybe we'll come up with something for co-living as well. But yeah, so it's a very, I would say our industry is still very nascent, and probably all the partners or all the big players know each other. We have known each other since last 10 years. It's very brotherly environment, I would say, among the industry.
Nice. You've almost single-handedly created this category which did not exist earlier, right? For others who are likely doing something similar in different domains, right? What are some 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would offer to them? What to do, what not to do?
So obviously, I would say, let's just pick first our case, and then we can say, differently. And obviously, I was bold enough to build, backpacker hostels in India, but I wouldn't say that I'm the founder of the concept of backpacker hostels, right? Backpacker hostels have always existed. Nobody was bold enough to, let's say, do it in India for various cultural reasons that, hey, no woman will stay in here. Those were the kind of questions we got.
Right.
That, no females will ever come over here. Why would somebody pay $500 when they can stay at $200 in a dharamshala? Or YMCA or something like that. And somebody you have to be obviously crazy and believe that this should exist, right? And obviously as they say, nakal mein bhi akal chahiye, something like that. So I did invest a lot of time backpacking, very deeply, and did once in 2011 purely out of passion and exploring. Then I did once again from a very research oriented perspective. So I knew what software these guys were running. I just from a I do come with a taste, so I knew that I love the graffitis which are there, and obviously from a convenience standpoint, that you need power plugs and charging spots at your bed. So I would still say, if you backpack across Europe, around 50% of hostels won't have graffiti. Around 50 or 40 to 50% of hostels won't have a charging cable or a power socket or a light that's separate to you. But while we defined the standards, the bare minimum standards in India, and obviously everybody else got inspired and replicated what Zostel was doing. So today in India there is actually no hostel that's without graffiti. So we were obviously the first ones who paid artists anything to paint on the walls. And today obviously it's expanded a lot more. And then today I think in India you find a lot more hostels that have chargers and lights with their backpacker hostels as compared to even Europe, which is supposed to be largely, developed a lot earlier.
Right.
So yeah, I would just say, we copied the good parts and then, people liked it.
I think this is a point that we made on the podcast oftentimes, right? I think execution is just, it's a unique in its own way, right? I mean, we keep saying that, Flipkart is not India's Amazon, Ola is not India's Uber, etc. I mean, those businesses have to be built in India, right? And there are plenty of people who tried. It's not like, like people say online sometimes, right? I mean, it's just a copy. It isn't, right? It takes a lot of blood, sweat and tears to make it happen. And any of these successful businesses in India have solved acutely Indian problems, right? Because I'm sure that backpacking in India is not the same as backpacking in the US or Europe, right?
That's true, and obviously operating it is in a, even if you want the, the vibrations and the social crowd to largely be inside a common room that, you come to a place that's largely doesn't judge you, on basis of let's say color or even country or race or ethnicity. You're just a traveler, who's exploring. So that does come, at hostels. Having said that, obviously, operating businesses in India has its own nuances and challenges. And, because we solved those things, I think, and molded a business model around it, today we are world's largest chain of backpacker hostels. We have more than 80 sites, under the brand. There's nobody who has that. Today we have a larger global vision that, the overall industry itself is very nascent. We don't have the backpacker hostels or the social travel concept largely in the MENA region. Middle East doesn't understand it. They understand luxury. They don't understand, what's 6 people in a room. It's maybe labor camps. I would, be bold to say, very similar things about even United States. They have a lot more Patel motels. That's how, now I think about things that, you need a crazy entrepreneur who just wants to fucking build it out. And it just builds. Things don't just happen automatically. And therefore, I think, what we have as an advantage is, with all of my earlier experiences, for me, I wanted to do this. Not because it was cool, not because it was the hot thing or, a new wave that venture capital will fund. It was just, as I said, that, coming out of purely inner love to build something, And then I used to think that what do I have? I have friends who can, do larger operations and then, have the whatever, skills to really think about how you can do this scalably. So, we moved towards a franchisee model. We built our technologies and software. So even if we do a lot today, a lot of hard ops, it's largely, centrally we think that we are a small 50 people team doing a lot of work. So
right. Yeah. So there's this concept of founder market fit that we also talk about often.
True.
And I think in your case, that is very strong, right? I mean, you're from a background in hospitality in the sense that you come from Rajasthan and plus you went to ITBHU. So you got the tech skills, bit of a nerd. And plus you loved backpacking. So, I mean, it's a combination of all of this that has led you to create something so unique, right?
True. Yeah. And, once you understand these aspects, I think you want to build business around your own strengths. So I think today what we are doing at Zo House, this takes it a step further.
Right.
Our memberships run on NFTs. So there's a whole Web3 degen layer attached to it.
Right.
and you'll get to meet people. But yeah, totally, man. There's a founder market fit, and founder, if you can build something around it,
Yeah.
uh, nothing better. If a founder market and a product can come in between, what else?
Trifecta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though you were going after a very unique sort of an audience and a market, right? I mean, were you at all skeptical that somewhere you're taking on such large established players in a industry which is very very old? I mean,
You would say like Taj, ITC.
yeah, maybe or even your normal 3-star or your ibis kind of business hotels and so on. I mean, did you feel that maybe, I mean, it's a
True, true. No,
it's a
not at
scary
all.
thing to sort of.
Actually, the even before I started, the real epiphany that I had was I made a couple of friends at a couple of backpacker hostels, and obviously it was a wonderful feeling. But the way an entrepreneur thinks, so I was just shutting down one startup. So I just felt that hey, it's just so unique that even if I'm staying at a Taj, even if I'm a millionaire and I can afford to stay, I can pay $20,000 a night. I would rather stay in a comfy backpacker hostel where I can meet new people rather than staying at a Taj where I cannot meet new people. So that just pushed us into, what you say, like a blue ocean category that, you are just different than Taj. You're not even comparing to
It's very distinct.
better or worse
Yeah.
or something like that. And Ibis, obviously, these brands don't even stand a chance, because I just think that we are even in one dimension, we are better than Taj, if you want to compare it from a social space. So.
Right. All right. One final question on culture, and then we'll move on to some of the operational business stuff. Right. So what goes into creating this culture? I mean, this unique culture. I mean, this is the question I started with, and I'd love to distill it down so people understand it, because you're going after this very unique sort of a TG, right? And you've built a product that caters to this particular TG. How do you maintain that culture as it scales, right? So how do you make sure that the 100th property that you build has that same vibe as the first, second, maybe 10th property that you
True,
build?
true. And you obviously want to take them, notch up, right?
Yeah,
Because now you have more resources
yeah.
and you have bigger brand and expectations. Do you know what you call, how dahi is made?
Yeah,
The
of
curd's
course.
made,
Yeah,
right? What do you call, like you need to put some curd in milk
milk
to make more curd, right?
fermented overnight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you call the earlier curd it's called as culture? So it's called as culture. So
Right.
so the thing is that it spreads one to one. So
Right.
the unique thing about culture, Sanskriti, as they call in Sanskrit, is that it spreads one to one. It's like bacteria that just compounds, but just one overnight it can spread pretty wild, right? The way it happens with curd. So if you are building something that's so unique and you want to keep a cultural moat, as a central piece of your business, what you really need to do is to make sure that your business is somehow working to compoundingly forward that so the way we have really grown the business is there's somebody who stays with us for a night. Most probably it's the same individual who visits another time and then decides that I want to be a volunteer at your property, and so he already gets the other side of the culture, right? So now he's a volunteer at one of our properties for 2 months. So he sets the vibe. He's kind of owner, making sure that everybody has a good evening and a good morning session, something like that.
Kind of like a host himself.
Yeah, kind of like a host. So
Yeah.
we give them stay and space and food for 2 months, and it's a
Yeah.
young job. And in terms of heart and spirit, I would say, many times, people who
Right.
are very, who have spent, multiple decades in United States, or they come and take a sabbatical and they love to volunteer at backpacker hostels. So, then these are the same individuals who then decide that, hey, I love being a volunteer. Maybe I want to maybe I want to be a property manager if I'm young, something like that. Or maybe I want to build my own hostel. Maybe I want to invest a bit, rather than buying a flat in a metropolitan, why don't I put in my 1, 2, 3 CR and build a hostel in my own local town? So everybody has a village. They have some ancestral land over there. Every day we get more than 10 people who want to open a hostel somewhere, and huge investment interest in the number of people who want to open. And so, the way we really built and curated the business going forward was that we filter a lot of these individuals. We work very closely with the selected few, and we invest a lot of time in building each and every hostel. I think it's good that we have today, let's say, 80 plus. Probably we have signed more than 100, but it's still not a lot. The way I built Zo Rooms as a business, I probably had, I would say, 800 hotels in less than 1 year. Or maybe the way Oyo scales right now, right? So you can build businesses in different fashion, and at Zostel, what I really wanted and what we as a team really wanted to do was keep the cultural thing intact, and build a moat around it. So really helped us survive totally in the corona phase as well. And the amazing team, we did had sacrificial things in terms of taking a reduced salary, but as soon as we made money, we paid everything back to our partners, to our all of our employees, to myself as a team. I also serve the organization. So it's beautiful to see, in terms of how a cultural compounding mode can evolve.
Right. Awesome. Let's talk about the economics of the business. So initially, you would lease these properties, right? Do them up, and then kind of rent out subunits, right? It could be dorms or it could be individual rooms, etc. And then you started this franchising model where people would kind of invest, and you would give all the SOP, the know-how, and everything, right? So how does it make money? So what are your revenue streams like, and how much does it cost, and when do you get the money back?
So let's break it down in two things. One is the unit level of a hostel, and then we can look at today how we operate the central business. On a unit level, also I would like to break it down. Let's say on a simple room that sells let's say for 2,000, a simple room budget hotel room 2,000 2,500, that room sells. So that same real estate space, if you put 4 dorms in that space, you can sell, let's say, each of them for 600 or 500 or whatever. So basically you can charge 2x the revenue, keeping all the security, space, area all the same. You have to cater to obviously a specific crowd, because if you're catering to, let's say, a totally budget crowd, you just cut the vibes, that doesn't work, the paying customers. But if you cater to a traveler crowd, that is in our sense, you can invest not in a refrigerator in the room, not in a television set in the room. You can take all of that money, put it in a bigger common room area. So the whole real estate dynamics, because we have a customer in mind, allows you to change the dynamics of how our leased real estate is being built up. Today, I think it costs close to, I think, 1 lakh per bed. I think for a franchisee, in terms of pure capex that somebody has to put in. Our average, per bed ARRs are now close to, I would say, 1,300. And typically, I think the break-even periods for these lease amounts, if you'll multiply, let's say, a 50-bed property, so it's usually a 50 lakh amount of capex. So these 50 beds would then once again, make closer to 3 to 4 lakhs of profit every month. So you break even into closer to 14 to 18 months, that typically in that range. And if you'll just look at the numbers, it will be, let's say 50 beds, you take it, to a 60% occupancy, 67% is our average. But let's just say, 20 room nights, even if you take, so if you take those 20 room nights, 2,000 a night, usually boils around to, let's say, 4 lakhs, right? 1,300, 4 lakhs. And this is, so we actually on a central level only take revenue numbers from the occupancy, just the beds right now. And obviously the math that I told you, we want to push on the higher side with our Zostel Plus, etc. So I just suggested closer to, let's say, 1 lakh a capex bed. But usually a lot of our franchisees, for a larger part of the decade, it used to be closer to 50,000 capex. So, 25 lakh Zostel would be, a lot of franchisee, I think, in early days would have started at that range. And today, we operate all of these, local units that break even even if you have taken on lease under 18 months. But what I love to suggest to people is that, the reason Zostel works a lot is that, we have a lot more people, customers who love Zosteling. They love to travel to wherever Zostel is. Zostel is actually redefining, I think, we are redefining how people travel. So you don't search the destination. You don't really search the destination that's going on at let's say Make My Trip or etc. If you know where you are going, you might as well go to booking.com and search there. You come to Zostel to look and see of unheard destinations around you. And so what that basically means is these destinations, from a purely business perspective, the real estate is a lot cheap. So these local individuals, we suggest them that if you can buy the land and build these things out, it's even better for everyone. So then they don't have a rental any sort of issues, and their property appreciates a lot more because the real estate is a lot cheap in India outside the cities. If you buy real estate,
Yeah.
it's a lot cheap, in jungles, in the mountains, or let's say closer to deserts. These are the places where the fundamental real estate is cheap,
Right.
where our business model brings in a much higher superior yield than anything else, and
Right.
therefore these businesses works. Therefore a lot of chaos that happened in terms of our internal organizations, etc., over the last decade. But the core fundamental business just mints money. So people love to open backpacker hostels. And
Awesome. Awesome. You mentioned you have a ton of inbound interest, right? I mean, how do you decide where you're going to open up a hostel or a new property?
we have a lot of primary research that's already concluded. So
Yeah.
we do a very ongoing thorough research that we have internally. We have the next 100 destinations that are already mapped in India where we want to open a hostel, where we are very sure we can push up our demand. And these are the places that are now becoming accessible because of tier 2 airports in India, because of newer highways that are being built in our country. So a lot more districts are getting connected
Right.
to the larger part of India. So India has 741 districts. So we have a complete map of India. So we have already 100, keep a 100 destination focus list, that if somebody comes in, very good. Otherwise also we try to do justice to each and every destination. If somebody has a good asset within that destination, things can shape up pretty quickly.
Right. Talk about Zo World. This whole thought process of having this NFT club and so on, right? How did that come about?
So I do believe that, I think digital assets is a fundamental technological change, in the sense that, it's still fairly young, it's younger than both of us. We have done a lot in our lives, but still nothing compared to internet, right? And I think that I'm still getting mature, so I feel that, Bitcoin being the first digital asset 14 years ago, today the technology is at that level that anybody can create anything as a digital asset. And just like anybody can create a website, right? But to get people on your website is always the tough task.
Yeah.
And just like that, you can create a digital asset, but why would it be valuable? Why somebody would put in their liquidity for it? Why would it trade? Those are very interesting challenges. There's no playbook. It's a wild west. So I'll be very honest that I'm super excited by the unknown, in terms of my explorations. I would have loved if the world wouldn't have been explored. I might have been on the ship to, God knows, discovering a new continent, but that's not possible. So I look at that, these are new dimensions, in terms of exploring and, building value. So I feel that the vision that I have of a, global community that can come together, somehow what I've realized is that, all you need to really travel anywhere is not a backpacker hostel, is not a hotel, it's a friend who lives there. So I wanted to make something like that we have friends from all over the world that are connected in this network, and we have partners. They can themselves host, or they know other hostels, or they know land sites on which we can build hostels, but something that really builds itself out over the century rather than earlier, or maybe earlier, but it's a big challenge. I think this century, if we have friends like that all across the world, we'll see the borders a lot less. Humanity is traveling a lot more, and obviously, you and I both, I'm pretty sure that you are a well-traveled individual, to confidently follow your heart and expressing yourself in different forms. So I think traveling really helps humans in that.
Yeah, it certainly broadens the mind, right? I mean, exposes you to different things that sometimes you might be uncomfortable with, but you see that as a different way of existing, a different way of living. I think this whole NFT play sort of attracts a different sort of an audience.
So I'll just tell you, I should, I just get drifted a lot of times, so I'll just, come back and say that it's a value, so I couldn't really extract any sort of cultural value from building hostel. The business I had to do was sell beds, right? And even if it's leaving a lot of intangible value, helping people discover
Yeah.
themselves, falling in love, getting married, meeting friends, starting startups, there was no way. It wasn't technologically possible, I would say. Digital assets, I think, allow me to build and capture that cultural value that we just talked about. I think, it's beautiful in the sense that, why does anything has value? Those questions start to arise. If you really are focused on a first principle level, it's a big rabbit hole. Obviously, I think a lot of our users might not be on that side. But I just think that digital assets with our early community and early users allows me to make them a part of the growth. Let's say if Uber is today starting up and it raises $10 million for 10% of equity and then gives that $10 million discount to customers and the riders or drivers, right? It pays minimum guarantees, right? So that everybody can drive. And the network builds, and then obviously the value goes to all the shareholders for billions of dollars. Those early users or the riders, they get whatever the money that they got, right?
Right.
If I'm able to, if we are able to, as a team, able to build Zo World in a sustainable fashion in which people who help us build the Bangalore community are incentivized and rewarded long term in terms of wealth creation, holding some, let's say, a BLR token, somebody who's helping us build, let's say, a FIFA or a poker culture is being rewarded with a FIFA token that's probably, meaningless and invaluable right now. But it's just that, it's giving with those people who build it out, and then if they don't, it's a game theoretic sense. If they don't feel that it's worthless, they don't give it for free, it starts to hold value. So
I sense a common theme, starting with the fact that you have about 7 co-founders with Zostel, right? To the fact that you open up to franchisees, to this whole NFT sort of community that you're building. I think it's core to you that you want to share whatever you're doing, right? Is that right?
yeah, so I was a bit apprehensive, with my. So I had my first startup when I had no co-founders in my Bright End studio, So then in my next startup, I was like, I need to definitely have co-founders. Then I had a bit too many. I would have actually had a lot more, if my seventh co-founder wouldn't have advised me against it. Then also had, around 20 more core team members, and they are all doing phenomenal right now. And then there was a phase in which, obviously, you go back and try to learn and understand your learnings of the universe. And so then, I realized that, it's who I am, so it's obviously a double-edged sword, but it's better I double down on my strengths than, try to, mold them or, be afraid of them. So, it comes naturally to me, in terms of sharing my space, sharing information, just rooting for the other guy, vicariously. And I think, now I'm able to, somehow build a business around it. So now I have, 1100 founders, so our membership is called as actually Founders
Right.
of the World.
Right.
And these NFTs now trade for zero point 0.6 Ethereum, in such a market. And
Right.
it's phenomenally, good learning. And therefore, I think that BLR token is how do we go from 1100 to a million,
Right.
and I think we need close to a million people in community to really, build something that can have hundreds of millions of people travel around.
Right. The fact that you don't have a whole lot of investors, right? You didn't start with a ton of funding and so on and so forth. Is that why you're able to maintain your independent spirit and do very counterintuitive things like maybe have multiple co-founders, right? 7 co-founders at that, or build in crypto at a time when the market is turned, and so on and so forth. And would you kind of advise others, other founders who are building as well to sort of think about this as a
Man,
reasonable.
as a young founder, you don't get it many times that, raising funds comes with its own, cuffs attached,
Yeah.
right? So I could do a lot of stupid things that, meanwhile I didn't have a lot of, investors or raised a lot more money. As I raised money in the Zorooms business, you become more responsible. You want to make sure that you give a good positive return exit to your investors, etc. So things become a lot more challenging, I would say, and therefore, I think we took that exit, when we got the opportunity with, competitors. And I think today also, the reason I was able to explore crypto so handsomely and beautifully and stay pure and discover, something is because, with my learning experience, my previous venture raises that I have done, so you don't have that sort of a fascination from venture capital. So you want to use it wisely. You want to choose your partners very well. And definitely, for entrepreneurs, they need to choose somebody who understands them, wants to partner with them, rather than somebody who just and there are obviously different plays,
Yeah.
but yeah, you want to maintain your freedom for sure.
Yeah. No, I think these kind of stories are very important to tell because, I mean, for some time, I think founders have this weird idea that the only way to run a business is to raise a ton of money from VC and then, get on that hamster wheel. But it's also important for us to kind of show that there's an alternate mode of running a good tech business, tech-enabled business, right?
Yeah, dude. I think it's, in the bear market, I think everybody gets a lot more wiser. So nobody's giving you
For a
free
while
money
at least.
for a while at least. So
Yeah. So we'll take a slight tangent to talk about crypto. I want your views. I mean, you seem like a true blue believer, right? I mean, because who would build in this kind of a market, right? I'm not a skeptic. I'm not a true, like a optimist either. I think I rank somewhere in between. So I'm kind of the perfect person to ask you this question, right? I mean, 3-4 years back, I think, we started talking about crypto as a solution to everything, right? From world hunger to world
bull
poverty to
market, these things happen.
everything, right? I mean, there was a huge optimism and bullishness, right? And then once that market correction happened and everything and people lost money and stuff like that, I mean, they went to the other extreme. Ki ye sab fad tha. I mean, like
Pura scam
everything
hai,
is scam,
Right.
whatever, right? But I know that the answer is somewhere in between, and anything new, we can't fully understand it, right? Anything, right? As we were coming down, I was giving the example of internet itself in the early
Yeah,
days,
yeah,
right? People would have thought, like, or even computers, right? Who even thought that everyone needs a computer
Yeah,
for themselves,
totally.
right? There's that famous thing of IBM doing that market sizing for computers and saying
That's
that,
how Bill Gates made money, bro.
yeah, right? So what are your views on crypto? What are some real world use cases that can evolve from crypto, and how do you see this going forward? I mean, one other very what do you say, popular question I'll ask is, will Bitcoin go to $1 million?
Yeah, it can. Okay, so I think we'll take a step back. In terms of after my whatever I had learned at Zostel and Zo rooms, I wanted to this time choose a market that will win the world. So for me, this is 16, 17. And by the time I built Zostel, I've scaled Zo rooms, and so now I understand a lot more about market size. I know a lot more about scaling things, and I just felt that obviously Zostel is something out of culture, and I love to scale that up. But where is my 100x? Because Zostel will not be greater than Google, right? And for me to be excited, I need to have I don't mind, having 0.001% probability. I eat ambiguity for breakfast, bro. So that's good for me, but I need that, there is an out that's worth winning. And there, I figured out this is when I think the whole decentralized market cap was closer to 100 billion. So I was just thinking that, where will the next $1 trillion companies will form? Today there are many $1 trillion companies, right? Not even one, So these companies are formed, bro, in markets that go on to win the world. So you must identify the markets, and you can be right, wrong, but you must be early over there. Let's say Amazon, internet. That's how things work. Apple, Microsoft, personal computing, as you said. You have to be early when people don't get it. Right. So I think that's where, I think right now digital assets and Bitcoin is that nobody gets it. The founder of Bitcoin has long left, nobody knows why he will do whatever, right? And so it's an interesting technology in that sense that, this is somewhere that even if Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, they want to build, they have to possibly, go back and, destroy their own couple of business models or come to a new battleground, and as a startup you want to fight in places that are new. That's how you get a foot in the door. And therefore I truly wanted, so I figured out that there was AI/ML, crypto, digital assets, and AR/VR. This is 17 research that I concluded up more than a year. I just kept studying. And after that I just did a lot more deeper research in crypto, etc. So that's where I come from, right? That I feel that there's a non-zero probability that Bitcoin will go to zero. That's fine. It's very much possible. Satoshi's wallet comes to life. CIA is the one who created Bitcoin, or maybe we get to quantum computers and something's hacked. Bitcoin can go to zero. That's all fine, right? But let's just, as a startup, let's be optimistic. What happens when Bitcoin doesn't go to zero, right? Those are the experiments that you decide to do, and then then you come to Ethereum. That okay, Bitcoin is a largely store of value. Ethereum is somewhere where people fool around. It is programmatically creating digital assets. Not as easy on Bitcoin, but on Ethereum you can create digital assets. Our NFTs come over there. Where I see myself is that today a lot of Web3 is protocols. It's trading. It's people speculating on prices and assets and things like that. Right. Where Zo World and our memberships come from is that we are on the consumer layer in this broken world out there. So we come to individuals who want to host a podcast, let's say. So our membership makes sense for them. And once we have these kind of Zo houses across Bangalore, many places, across India, across world, we feel that this will be one of the most coveted memberships of the 21st century. And I feel that, therefore a lot of value accrues in the digital asset that allows me to, then build reputation that I know how to build digital assets and then keep building upon it further. And this social experiment is on right now. You are also now a part of it. Hopefully some of your viewers decide to check out Zo House and then realize that they can't come to Zo House. So it's things like that, and that's how I've placed my bets. It's a very leveraged bet in terms of it's polarized. It needs other things to fall in place.
Right.
And if those things fall in place, then things get exciting for us at Zo World, and we don't mind that. We just are aware about it. We are not, looking to make any quick buck over here. We feel that it's an opportunity. I understand that, it's very easy to make scams, right? So if in an early .com bubble, that's what it was, a .com bubble, right? Somebody bought a pets.com domain and had an IPO for $4 billion.
Yeah.
And, you have tokens that can do that. But those are also the times when Google, Amazon, PayPal, such opportunities will come, and hopefully we will be able to find our AWS or search engine or something that
Right.
can't stop making money.
Yeah, I mean, just like we don't call e-commerce a scam, because maybe there could be a fraudulent site or etc. Right, and there could be, we have the Amazons and Flipkarts of the world today. Clearly, like multi-billion-dollar, or Amazon perhaps nearing $1 trillion company, right? I think.
But there are genuine frauds and scams in crypto,
of course.
Because what's happening is that you can move value, right? Before that,
and quickly as well, right?
Yeah, you can instantly move value. You can misclick and lose a wrong signature value.
Yeah.
So therefore, obviously, Wild West attracts the most scammers out there, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, 99% of projects are scams. The founders possibly don't even have a clue, don't want to build.
Yeah.
And it's all fine.
No, which is why I think more responsible people should sort of build in the space, right? I mean, I think the fact that you can validate a single transaction on the internet like uniquely is, I think it's probably like an invention of wheel kind of a thing.
That's right. That's why I'm excited about. And, and it can get very exciting. Bitcoin is basically the hedge against the world. Right now, let's say our country has a $500 billion US debt. If we just buy $5 billion worth of Bitcoin, which is 1% of our debt, we just sit quietly. We don't need to do anything. But if United States decides to screw up, and they print more money or anyhow, we don't need to pay the debt, because it's basically hedged against your Bitcoin, right? So you can be debt free. And today's freedom is actually being debt free. There's no other freedom, right? The world runs on it. So
right. Yeah. There's this wonderful article by Balaji Srinivasan on why India should adopt crypto.
Yeah.
Right.
Big thing.
Yeah. So do check that out. Meanwhile, what is your advice to founders who are executing in this kind of a market environment? Clearly, there's some amount of gloom and doom, right? People have had to learn how to build profitable businesses and build sustainable growth and so on and so forth, right? So what is your advice on how to build a sane business in these times?
I think still consumer demand is yet to fall a lot,
Yeah.
So that's good. on a macro level. And yeah, dude, I think, it just brings a lot more clarity. I think you should embrace the bear market and just stop running around that, there's somebody who's going to possibly give you money right now. Build something more worthwhile, as they say, as we have all said, that, be the hottest girl so that, everybody wants you, rather if you chase around, you don't get anything, or be the good guy, so who can attract. So I think that's the same with startups and VCs, right? And obviously, I can understand the market, but still I would say that if you're doing something that's batshit crazy, let's say in an AI hot tech, possibly OpenAI is doing around at 100 billion or 90 billion. So things are moving, for people who have something more to show. And so it's a true test, and hopefully you weren't doing this for some short gain. So it's a good time to reflect upon yourself, why you are doing your startup. And if the answer if it's clear, it will be even more helpful, that I really want to do this.
Yeah, awesome. Before we end the podcast, any books or podcasts that you would recommend? Who should people follow? I mean, aside from all the Zo handles and whatnot.
Yeah, so I do vlogs, dvcoolster at x.com. So that's there. And I think, Sovereign Individual is a good book, for our Web3 believers, or understanding the possibilities. It's a good dynamic in the sense that it's written in 97, so, and it does foretold how the world might shape up. And definitely a good read to think about things. I do listen to a lot of, I think, Friedman is obviously good. Then for a chill vibes, you can listen to All In in the startup scenes. Boys are good. I love, seeing so Anderson, Horowitz, these guys, both of them, they don't do a lot of their own podcast. They do sometimes. A16Z is phenomenal, larger content from them. And then both of the founders themselves go out and talk a lot. So those are good. In terms of just purely thinking boldly, I would say, many times we do restrict our boldest imagination. So
Yeah. Awesome. I've said this often on the podcast that crypto is awesome. I think just as a technology and innovation, don't get sidetracked by all of the price action that happens, like in any hot
it's
market.
a byproduct,
right?
Because the innovation is asset, right?
Yeah.
And I'll just give you one more thought, for everybody. So it's very exciting in the sense that if you think about who is a user of Bitcoin, or let's say who is a normal user of our mobile app, it's somebody who opens your app, let's say 5 times a day, or you have daily active users, you have monthly active users, the numbers that you track. But in Bitcoin, you're not a Bitcoin user if you use Bitcoin 5 times a day. That's a flawed way of thinking, because the real innovation is in the asset. So if you're holding Bitcoin, you are a Bitcoin user. The number of people, so you don't need to transact every day. The product market fit doesn't get reflected in high number of, let's say, server load or server usage. It does reflect in your last traded price. It does reflect on, what's your, let's say, current listing over there. And so I think that's just one difference. If you come from first principle, everything changes. If you want to build in digital assets and think about that. So value is a byproduct, and therefore you have these price. I wish, you could build in Web3 without price, but it's just that it's asset, supply, demand.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I'm actually looking forward to, some real world use cases actually emerging, and maybe, it requires more mature, responsible founders to sort of build in this space. So let's hope for that. Hey, thank you so much for being on the podcast again.
Fun,
and
man. Super fun.
Awesome chatting with you. And I'm sure this won't be the first, this won't be the last of our conversations.
Just a beginning. Just a beginning. Super nice. Super nice watching you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Thiru, as well for us. Amazing vibes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll bring you another episode shortly, but until then, like, share, subscribe, all of the good stuff.
Zo.